It was just after midnight on New Year's Eve when we pulled into the driveway. Me still humming the last tune from the party. Rachel already scrolling through her phone like the evening had never happened. The crisp winter air stung my cheeks, but I was in a good mood until I saw our front door. It was wide open. I froze. Did you forget to lock the door? Rachel didn't even look up. She stepped ahead of me like she was walking into a coffee shop. You were the last one out, David. Not me. I followed her in, already sensing something was off. The living room lights were still off, but the shape of the space was wrong. The shadows didn't sit where they were supposed to. I flipped the switch and felt my gut sink. Drawers were pulled open. The TV was missing. Cushions tossed onto the floor. Someone had been here, rummaging, picking through our lives. I blinked hard. Rachel, our place got hit. Clearly. Her voice was flat, like someone reporting bad weather. I turned to her. Did you not double-check the door? We were gone for hours. She spun to face me now, finally setting her phone down. Oh, so this is my fault. I didn't say that. No, you're implying it. But let me ask you something. Where's the security system? The cameras I begged you to install 6 months ago? The ones you said we didn't need because we live in quiet, boring suburbia? Her tone was laced with venom, and I didn't expect it, not after seeing our home like this. You're really doing this right now? I said. The place was ransacked, Rachel. Can we focus on what's important? She crossed her arms, eyes sharp. You want to talk about important? Fine. What's important is that I've asked you to take basic precautions repeatedly, and you've brushed me off every single time. So don't act shocked when someone waltzes in. I stared at her, trying to find any sign of fear or concern, but there was only this cold distance. You don't even look surprised, I muttered. Because I'm not. I stopped expecting you to listen a long time ago. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words stuck. Because suddenly, I couldn't tell if she meant about the security system or something much bigger. We stood there in the wreckage of our living room. Two people surrounded by the debris of more than just a break-in. I bent down, started picking up the overturned lamp. You calling the cops? I asked quietly. No, she said. You do it. This is your mess. She walked off toward the kitchen. No panic. No tears. Just silence and judgment. I stayed there for a moment, staring at the dented coffee table. For years, we'd lived a life of routines. Morning coffee together, dog walks after dinner, movie nights on the couch. Nothing grand, but it was ours. And now, I didn't know what this was. Maybe it was the robbery. Maybe it was the way she looked at me like a stranger. But something cracked that night, and it wasn't just the front door. And the worst part? I had no idea if this was the beginning, or if it had already begun a long time ago. The next morning was quieter than I'd expected. No lingering conversation about the police report. No shared reflection over what had just happened. Rachel barely spoke a word as she sipped her coffee in the kitchen. Me? I was already halfway out the door, jacket zipped, purpose in every step. By 10 a.m., I was standing in the middle of a sterile electronics store, the kind with too much fluorescent light and a wall full of glossy black boxes promising protection. My hands hovered over 2 models before settling on one. Sleek, expensive, professional grade. The kind of system you'd use in a bank. The irony didn't escape me. Now I was doing the thing Rachel had asked for, months too late. But this wasn't about guilt. It was about control. Something had slipped through our front door last night, more than just a thief. And I needed to feel like I could hold on to something. When I got home, I didn't say anything at first. Just walked past Rachel, still in her robe, still glued to her phone, carrying the box under my arm. She didn't look up. I cleared my throat. I bought the cameras. Professional system. Cloud backup. Motion alerts. The works. Rachel didn't even glance at me. Just scrolled with one finger, thumb flicking up like it was the most important motion in the world. Okay, she murmured. I understand. That was it. No thank you. No sigh of relief. Not even a fake smile. I stood there in the kitchen doorway for a second, gripping the box tighter than necessary. You want to help me set them up? I offered. She finally looked up, not with interest, but with this expression I couldn't read. Almost like boredom. No, she said softly. I've got a call in a few minutes. I nodded, even though nothing about this felt okay. I walked out without another word and got to work. Installing cameras isn't hard, technically, but drilling holes into the corners of your own home? That does something to a man. Every screw I tightened felt like I was patching a leak in a sinking boat. The first camera went up above the front door. I angled it so the entire porch would be visible. The next went in the living room. Wide angle, perfect for the main space. Another in the hallway, one more outside the garage. As I adjusted the last one, I heard her voice drift in faintly from the kitchen. No, I didn't tell him that. I don't think he's even noticed. He's busy with his little project right now. A pause. A quiet laugh. Then something mumbled, too low to catch. I didn't move. A part of me told myself it was nothing. Maybe she was talking to a friend, venting about how I finally decided to act like a husband. But that laugh? That quiet, knowing kind of laugh, it sat wrong with me. When I walked back into the kitchen, Rachel ended the call quickly. Her eyes didn't meet mine. "You done?" she asked, gesturing vaguely toward the ceiling, where the smallest black camera blinked a soft blue. "Yeah," I said slowly. "All set up. We'll get alerts on our phones. I gave you access to." "Okay," she replied, picking her phone back up. "Sounds good." I stood there for a moment, waiting for something. Maybe curiosity. Maybe just a real look in my direction. But there was nothing. I took a breath and opened the cabinet to put away the drill. My hands were still a little shaky, maybe from the caffeine, maybe from the feeling that whatever Rachel and I had, it was disappearing under my feet. She didn't ask what the system cost. Didn't ask how it worked. Didn't even seem to care. And yet, she was the one who wanted this months ago. Back then, she said it was about peace of mind, about protecting what we've built. So why, now, when I finally did it feel like I was protecting myself from her? That night, after she went upstairs early with her phone and a glass of wine, I sat alone on the couch, laptop open, scrolling through the security feed. Nothing on the cameras, just stillness. Still house. Still rooms. But somehow, everything inside me felt like it was in motion. Like something had already shifted, and I just hadn't caught it on tape. It was nearly midnight when I finally climbed into bed, the house quiet except for the low hum of the heat kicking on. Rachel was already propped against her pillow, phone lighting up her face like a campfire. She didn't glance at me, didn't even shift. I watched the blue glow dance across her skin, her fingers tapping out message after message. "Who are you texting?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She didn't look up. "Why?" "Because it's almost midnight," I said slowly. "And you've barely spoken to me since dinner." Rachel sighed, deep and theatrical. "I'm not doing anything wrong, David. Just texting friends." "Every night?" I asked. "For hours." That did it. She lowered the phone just enough to meet my eyes. Her expression wasn't guilt, it was offense. "You seriously tracking my screen time now?" "No," I replied evenly. "I'm just noticing things. Like the fact that your eyes haven't left that phone in 2 hours." "God," she muttered, swinging her legs off the bed. "Here we go. Here we go." I repeated. "Rachel, I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just paying attention." She stood now, arms folded, voice rising. "You think you're subtle, don't you? First the cameras, now this. What's next? GPS on my car? A tracker in my purse?" I sat up slowly, keeping my voice calm. "I installed the cameras because we were robbed." "No," she snapped. "You installed them because I said something that made you feel small. And now you're playing detective, pretending it's about safety when it's really about control." "I'm not trying to control you," I said. "I'm trying to connect with you. But you haven't met me halfway in days." "Because I don't want to connect," she hissed. "Not when everything I say gets dissected like evidence." That hit harder than I expected. I stayed quiet, letting the sting sit between us. Rachel stood there, breathing hard, then shook her head and grabbed her robe off the hook. "Where are you going?" I asked softly. "To the guest room," she said flatly. "I need some space." "Is that allowed, officer?" I didn't reply, just watched her walk out of the room, the door clicking shut behind her with deliberate finality. The silence after that was loud, almost unbearable. I lay back slowly, eyes drawn to the small blinking camera light on the bedroom shelf, steady, quiet, watching. And for the first time since I installed them, I wondered if they were recording anything that mattered, or if they were just capturing the slow unraveling of something I couldn't hold together anymore. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen, still groggy from a night of broken sleep. The guest room door was closed, the air in the house oddly still. I figured Rachel would avoid me for the day. I was wrong. She was already up, dressed, makeup done, and sipping coffee like nothing had happened the night before. A suitcase sat by the door. "Morning," she chirped, flashing a bright smile. I'm heading out this weekend. Spa trip with the girls. I stared at her, blinking. Spa trip? Yeah. Me, Tessa, Claire, and Nina. We've been planning it for weeks, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You know, massages, facials, cucumber water, that kind of thing. I didn't reply right away. I looked at the suitcase, the perfectly curated smile, the flawless calm. Where exactly? I asked. Someplace in Sedona. We're carpooling from Tessa's, she added, already grabbing her coat. I nodded slowly. Sounds nice. What about you? She asked, tone still light. Got any weekend plans? I reached into the cupboard and pulled out my thermos. Actually, yeah. Colorado. Cabin with Marcus and the guys. Rachel paused for a half-second, barely noticeable. You didn't mention that. You didn't either, I said evenly. She laughed lightly, almost playfully. Well, then I guess we're both spontaneous this week. She kissed the air near my cheek and breezed out the door. By sunset, I was 3 states away, standing on the deck of a quiet mountain lodge, overlooking endless pine trees dusted with snow. It was the kind of place where the air smelled like wood smoke and silence. Inside, Marcus was uncorking something fancy, and the other guys were throwing logs into the fire like it was a contest. Then my phone buzzed. Motion alert. Living room camera. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe a delivery guy. Maybe the wind. But when I tapped the notification, what I saw pulled the ground right out from under me. Rachel. Not at a spa. She was in our living room, wearing the same clothes she'd left in. Only now, she wasn't alone. He came in behind her, like he'd done it before. They moved with this disgusting familiarity. Her laugh, the same laugh she used to use on me, rang out as she leaned into him. They kissed. Not quick, not uncertain, like this was something they'd rehearsed. I didn't say a word, didn't flinch. I sat down on the edge of the bed, phone still in hand, heart thudding like a slow drum in my chest. And then, with no emotion in my voice, I pulled up my contacts and called Detective Graham, a guy I'd known since high school, now working cyber forensics. When he picked up, I didn't waste time. Graham, I need a favor. I've got footage. I need it sent to someone else's wife. He paused. You serious? Dead serious, I said. A beat of silence. Send it over. I'll handle the rest. I hung up and watched the camera feed a few seconds longer, just until they disappeared down the hallway. Then I shut off my phone. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I just sat there, quiet, still, breathing in cold mountain air that somehow felt cleaner than anything I'd had back home in months. It was just after midnight, and the mountain was silent except for the whisper of wind pushing through pine trees. I sat alone on the back deck of the cabin, wrapped in a flannel jacket, the cold biting at my cheeks. A glass of bourbon rested in my hand, half-melted snow crunching under my boots. Marcus slid the glass door open and stepped out beside me, carrying his own drink. He didn't say anything at first, just stood next to me, taking in the view. Moonlight hit the snow like glass. The kind of night that should have felt peaceful. Instead, I felt like my insides were made of fire. She didn't even hesitate. I muttered. Didn't even flinch. Marcus nodded slowly, sipped his bourbon. You sent the footage? Yeah, I said. To his wife. She deserved to know. Silence. The good kind. The kind only an old friend can offer without making it awkward. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, glass hanging loosely from one hand. It's the way she lied. Right to my face. The suitcase by the door, the name drop of her friends, every part rehearsed. She's good at it, Marcus said calmly. Too good. That's how you know it's not new. I glanced sideways at him. You think this has been going on for a while? He gave me a look like I already knew the answer. You don't flip a switch overnight and risk everything unless you've already crossed that line a dozen times in your head. She was gone, David. She's been gone. You're just catching up. I stared down at the glass in my hand. My reflection rippled in the amber liquid, tired eyes, clenched jaw. I keep going over every conversation, I said, trying to figure out when it started. When I lost her. Marcus exhaled through his nose, his breath visible in the cold. Wrong question, man. You didn't lose her. She left. That's different. That hit harder than I expected. I don't even think she regrets it. I whispered. She didn't look guilty. Not even a little. Just comfortable. Marcus turned to face me fully, his voice quieter now. Then maybe that's your answer. You did everything right. You stayed. You fought. And now it's done. She made her choice. I looked out over the ridge, where snow blanketed the world so thoroughly it felt like a clean slate. My phone buzzed again. Another alert. Probably Rachel texting some excuse, or the system telling me she'd left with him. I didn't check. Instead, I stood up slowly, walked to the edge of the deck, and without a word, hurled the phone into the snowbank below. It disappeared with a soft thud, like a chapter closing. Marcus watched it land, then raised his glass. Now you're free. Let anger pass. Let purpose take over. I stared at the snow for a moment longer, then knocked back the last of my bourbon. And for the first time in weeks, I felt it. Not peace, not closure, but something better. Clarity. I pulled into the driveway just after 8, headlights sweeping over the porch where that little blinking camera still stood, silently watching. The snow from Colorado had followed me home, dusting the street and sidewalk in a quiet frost. The house was dark, except for the living room lamp, dim and warm through the window. I stepped inside without a sound, dragging my duffel behind me. Rachel was on the couch, alone. She turned her head slowly when the door opened, and froze like she'd seen a ghost. Her phone slipped from her hand onto the cushions, forgotten. "You're back?" she said, voice thinner than usual. I nodded once, calmly. "Yeah." She sat up straighter, tucking her legs under her, trying to look relaxed, but her eyes told the real story. They darted from me to the bag I carried to the door behind me, like she couldn't decide which exit to prepare for. "I thought you weren't coming back until Monday," she added. I changed my mind. I set my keys down on the table by the stairs, took off my coat. She stood up now, arms crossed tight over her chest. I could tell she was bracing for something, but didn't know from which direction it would come. "Did something happen?" she asked. "Yeah." Silence. Her face twitched. The corners of her mouth pulled inward, jaw tightening. "With Marcus?" "No," I said simply. "With you." The silence between us now wasn't just heavy. It was dense, like the walls had closed in an inch, and neither of us wanted to breathe first. She took a step forward, then hesitated. "David," her voice softened, searching for the right footing. "If this is about something you think you saw, how long have we had cameras?" I asked, cutting in. She blinked. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "What?" I dropped the duffel on the floor beside the couch. "The cameras. When did we install them?" Her face went pale. Just a shade. Just enough. Her voice faltered. "We? I mean, you put them up last week, right?" I looked at her evenly. "Exactly a week ago." Her hand rose to her temple like she'd suddenly gotten a headache. She turned away from me, pacing 2 steps, then stopped. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't think they were on yet." "They were," I said. "Every minute." She spun back toward me. "David, this isn't what you think." I said nothing. Just started unpacking my bag. One shirt, a charger, socks, quiet, methodical movements. She watched me, breathing shallowly. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" I zipped the bag shut again, folding it neatly at the end of the couch. "Because I wanted to see what you'd do when you thought no one was watching." Rachel didn't speak. She just stood there, hands twitching at her sides. "Was it worth it?" I asked, still not looking at her. She stepped back like the question physically pushed her. "David, I'm not asking for an explanation," I said calmly. "Not tonight." She swallowed hard. "So what now?" I walked over to the kitchen, grabbed a glass from the cabinet, and filled it slowly with water from the fridge. The sound of the stream was the only noise in the room. "You can stay the night," I said flatly. "If you need to." She didn't answer. The glass was full. I set it on the counter, then finally looked at her again. "But don't insult either of us by pretending this didn't happen." Rachel's shoulders sagged. Her mouth opened, then closed again. She backed into the arm of the couch and sat down slowly, like her legs had given up the act of strength. The silence between us stretched on, long and suffocating. And above us, on the hallway shelf, the little blue camera light blinked steadily. Watching, recording, remembering. If this part resonates, give the video a thumbs up. The house was quiet the next morning, too quiet. I could hear the distant hum of the dishwasher running, the faint ticking of the hallway clock, but nothing else. Rachel hadn't said a word all morning. I knew something was off the second I came back from the garage. Her mug was still full on the counter. Phone abandoned. No keys. No jacket gone. She was still here. And then I heard it, barely audible, the quick, repetitive click-click-click of a mouse. From the study, I walked down the hallway slowly, the weight of each step making the wood creak beneath me. When I turned the corner, I saw her, seated at my desk, back hunched forward, her eyes glued to the monitor. Her fingers were moving fast, the mouse darting across folders and files like she was racing the clock. The desktop screen showed the home surveillance dashboard, feeds, storage clips, timestamps. She was deleting them, one by one. "You're a little late," I said. Rachel jumped like I'd shot a gun behind her. She turned in the chair, face pale and eyes wide with guilt. This isn't what it looks like." I gave a single cold laugh. "Really? Because it looks exactly like you're trying to delete evidence." "I wasn't going to." She paused, her voice catching in her throat. "David, please. This is all a mistake. If anyone sees that footage, you'll ruin lives." "I didn't ruin anything," I said. "You did." She stood now, voice rising with panic. "You had no right to send that video." "I had every right," I said. "You brought that man into my house. You lied. Over and over." So I gave his wife what she was owed. Rachel's breathing was rapid now. She clutched the edge of the desk like it was the only thing holding her upright. "You don't understand what this could do. He's not just a senator." I cut in. "Yeah, I figured that out." She blinked. Her panic deepened. "Then you understand why you need to undo this. It's not just about me anymore." "I don't need to undo anything," I said, crossing my arms. "The files are backed up off-site. His wife got them yesterday." Rachel's face crumpled. For a moment, she looked small, broken. Then, suddenly, her expression hardened. "You're sick," she hissed. "Spying on your own wife, sending private footage to strangers?" I tilted my head. "Private footage? In my house?" She stormed past me, into the living room, grabbing her phone off the couch. Her hands were shaking as she dialed. "Hello? Yes, I'd like to report an incident," she snapped. "My husband has installed surveillance without my consent. He's stalking me. I don't feel safe in my own home." I leaned against the hallway wall, watching her. Calm, silent. Rachel turned her back to me, whispering into the phone like she was already casting herself as the victim. The police showed up 15 minutes later, 2 officers, calm and courteous, stepping in with a notebook and a scanner. Rachel leapt up to meet them, voice trembling. "He's been watching me, recording things. He didn't tell me he was installing cameras, and now he's weaponizing the footage." One of the officers turned to me. "Sir, can you explain what's going on?" "Of course," I said, leading them to the study. "After our house was broken into on New Year's, I installed a legal, cloud-based security system. Cameras cover common areas only: front porch, living room, hallway, and the study entrance. All within standard privacy limits." The younger officer tapped on his tablet. "Do you have installation receipts and proof of notification?" I handed him the invoice from the electronics store and opened the app on my phone. "And as for notification, I told my wife the day I installed them." She replied, "I understand." The 2 officers exchanged a glance. One of them nodded. "Everything appears compliant. Cameras in shared spaces, with verbal notice. No laws broken." Rachel's mouth opened, but no words came out. She just stared at them like the floor had betrayed her too. The officer turned back to her. "Ma'am, unless you can prove intent to harm or harassment, there's no crime here. This is a domestic matter, not a criminal one." Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. "But he sent the footage." The officer sighed. "Again, legal property. If it was captured on his system, in his home, and shared with another adult involved in the situation, that's not a police issue." They packed up their tablet, nodded at me respectfully, and let themselves out. I stood in the hallway, watching Rachel sink onto the arm of the couch, as if everything had deflated inside her. I didn't say a word. The silence said enough. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't need to. There was a strange kind of quiet in the house, an absence of both guilt and guessing. The kind of silence that only arrives when a storm has passed, and all that's left is wreckage. And truth. I sat in the living room with the TV on mute, scrolling news headlines while a cup of hot tea steamed in my hand. The security footage had done its job, but I never expected it to ripple beyond the front porch. Then I saw it. Breaking news. Center screen. Rising State Senator Oliver Kane linked to extramarital affair in leaked surveillance footage. They'd blurred Rachel's face, at least in the first wave of stories, but the body language, the setting, the timeline. It was unmistakable. They even used a slowed-down still from my own hallway camera. The footage had gone viral. Commentators were already pulling up Kane's campaign speeches on family values, calling him out for hypocrisy. One article even described the home security footage as eerily poetic. I sat back, letting the heat of the tea press into my palms. I hadn't leaked the footage. I didn't need to. His wife did. I could feel it in the way the media had every timestamp, every angle, every room labeled like a courtroom exhibit. This wasn't a revenge leak. It was strategy, intentional, and it worked. Rachel didn't come downstairs until after 10. She looked like she hadn't slept at all, eyes swollen, lips pressed into a tight line. Her hands were trembling as she held her phone. She didn't say anything to me. She didn't have to. She already knew. Within minutes, she was running from room to room, grabbing clothes, stuffing drawers into a suitcase like the house was on fire. She dropped hangers, slammed the bathroom door, yelled into her phone in hushed, broken pieces. I didn't know it'd go public. No, I didn't. Oliver, you don't get to put this on me. More rustling. A second suitcase. And then, the crying started. Not soft. Not subtle. The kind of crying that comes when your whole world shrinks down to the size of a suitcase and a screen full of headlines. I didn't go to her. I didn't speak. Instead, I stepped out onto the back patio, tea in hand, and sat in my usual chair. The sky had opened up, letting loose a soft, steady rain. I listened to the quiet rumble of her heels on the hardwood, the sharp zip of the suitcase, the squeak of the front door. And then, just like that, Rachel ran out into the rain. No umbrella, no jacket, just tears, chaos, and the weight of everything she tried to hide. She didn't look back. I didn't wave. I just sat there, watching the water slide off the edge of the table, feeling the steam of the tea mix with the chill of the air. It wasn't justice. Not exactly, but it was enough. 3 weeks later, her chair in the courtroom was still empty. No texts, no emails, no cryptic calls in the middle of the night. Rachel had vanished. It wasn't dramatic, like in the movies. She didn't go out with a final speech or leave a trail of apologies behind. Just one stormy night, a suitcase, and the echo of the front door closing. And since then, silence. I showed up for every court date, wore the same navy blazer, brought the same folder of documents, sat in the same seat while my lawyer, Ben Whitman, a sharp, dry-witted guy who drank black coffee like it was a lifestyle, flicked through papers and waited with me. Still no sign of her? He asked again, flipping through the folder labeled Whitman versus Whitman. Nope, I said. Guess facial masks and scandal don't go hand in hand. Ben smirked, not even looking up. You know, in 10 years of practice, I've never had a defendant ghost her own divorce. She always had timing, I muttered, leaning back. The clerk called out again, Rachel's full name echoing around the room like it belonged to someone else. Still no appearance, the judge noted dryly. We'll proceed with uncontested ruling if there's no contact by the end of the month. Outside the courthouse, the breeze smelled like winter was giving up. The sidewalks were still damp, but the air had that early spring crispness. I turned to Ben as we reached his car. You know what the worst part is? He shrugged. That she took your best saucepan? No. I smiled faintly. She's the one who asked for the cameras. Months ago. Said we needed them to feel safer. He raised an eyebrow, clearly enjoying the irony. And those same cameras are the reason she's gone. I nodded. Ben chuckled to himself. You should write a book. How to catch a liar using their own suggestions. I might. I glanced toward the parking lot. Wouldn't be a long read, though. Just one chapter. Listen when the silence changes. He clapped me on the shoulder. Well, if she doesn't show by next Friday, you walk away with the house, the car, and no alimony. I don't care about the car, I said. Or the house. Ben tilted his head. So what do you want? I looked up at the pale gray sky. Nothing, I said. That's the point. Because somewhere between that blinking blue light and the sound of her suitcase zipping shut, I'd let go. She didn't owe me closure, and I didn't know her forgiveness. Now, she was a memory, a lesson, not a wound. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon when I got the message, an unknown number with just 3 words, meet me. Tonight. Below it, an address. Downtown. Warehouse District. I should have deleted it, but I didn't. Something about the way it was written, calm, precise, reminded me of someone. So I went. The address led me to a converted loft tucked above an old textile shop. Exposed brick, High ceilings, dim yellow light hanging from cords. It smelled faintly of old books and red wine. And there she was, Nora Kane, Senator Kane's wife, the one I'd sent the footage to. She was seated by the window, dressed in black, legs crossed, a glass of wine in hand. She looked like the kind of woman who knew how to set a room on fire just by lighting a match. "You came," she said, her voice cool, but not unkind. I didn't know what to expect. She gestured to the chair across from her. "You probably assumed I'd send lawyers. Or the police." I assumed a thank you was unlikely. Nora gave a quiet, amused hum. "No, I don't thank men for doing what's right. But I do offer them a drink." She poured me a glass without asking what I preferred. Red, sharp, dry. I took a sip, watching her over the rim. "So, what is this?" She leaned forward slightly, voice dropping. "An explanation." I said nothing, just waited. "Rachel," she began, "was being watched. Not by you, not just by me, but by a pair of very quiet, very persistent people who work for the Department of Justice." I blinked. "Come again." She nodded slowly. "Financial Crimes Division. Kane was laundering donor money through shell wellness businesses. Guess who signed some of the fake vendor forms?" My throat tightened. "Rachel, your wife was listed as CFO of a non-existent spa chain. They used her credentials, business accounts, some forged, some real. Everything traced back to your house." I set the glass down. Hard. "Are you saying she was in it?" Nora said flatly. And the moment the footage went public, someone in the DOJ realized they could finally draw a line between his private life and his campaign finances. I sat back, the weight of it settling like a stone in my chest. "So they ran." Nora swirled her wine. "3 days ago, private jet out of Dulles. Disappeared before the warrant could be signed. He's gone off the radar." She too. I stared at her. "And me?" She looked up, eyes suddenly sharp. "She never pulled you in. Not fully. Never trusted you enough. You weren't on the paperwork. Weren't copied in the emails. You were nothing but a husband she no longer respected." I let out a slow breath. "So, she betrayed me, and that betrayal saved me?" Nora raised her glass. "Irony tastes better with wine, doesn't it?" We clinked glasses. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. Just knowing. "So why tell me all this?" I asked. "Because I thought you deserved to know what you almost got pulled into." She stood now, moving to the window. "And because you sent me the truth when no one else would." I looked out the window beside her. City lights blurred in the distance. Below us, life moved on. Cars, people, ordinary sounds. "You're not going after them?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Let the DOJ chase ghosts. Me? I already won. I'm keeping the house. His assets. His dogs. Everything but his name." I nodded slowly. "Smart. Necessary." And with that, she turned back to her wine, and I stood to leave. "Thank you for the drink," I said quietly. Nora didn't look back. "Thank you for the proof." I left the loft with my coat collar turned up, heart pounding for reasons I didn't fully understand. I'd come close, so close, to being part of a fire I didn't see until it was already burning. And somehow, her distrust of me had kept me clear of the flames. It had been a month since the loft. 31 quiet days. No alerts. No breaking news. No Rachel. I'd gone back to rebuilding, repainting the walls, donating old furniture, pulling weeds from the front yard by hand just because it felt good to rip something out by the root. The security system still blinked quietly in the corner, but I didn't check it much anymore. Then, on a mild Thursday morning, just as I was locking the door to head to my new office downtown, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But I didn't. The message was short. No punctuation. Just words. I was wrong. I see it now. I let money and comfort blind me. I thought I was gaining everything. But I lost the only person who ever saw me. Then a second one, a few seconds later. "I hope you're doing better. I hope you don't hate me forever." I stared at the screen. There was no apology. Not really. No name, either, but I didn't need one. Only Rachel would send a confession that sounded like it wanted forgiveness without asking for it. I stood in the doorway for a long minute, phone resting in my palm. No fury rose up. No ache. Just stillness. I tapped the screen once. Delete. And just like that, she was gone again. I stepped outside into the sunlight. The morning air clean and unburdened. Today was launch day, my new tech firm's first pitch meeting, and I was walking in alone, not bitter, not broken. Lighter. The lesson wasn't about rage or revenge. It was about silence. Because silence isn't empty. It's waiting. And betrayal always speaks. Once you stop ignoring what's missing. That was the end of the story. Rachel deleted evidence. Nora leaked it. Kane ran. All of them made choices, but only one chose to expose the truth when no one else would. So here's what I want to know. Did Nora do the right thing by going public, or was she just settling a personal score? Let me know what you think in the comments below.